Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd of the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host, Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. Kat is frantically on her way home from work, so she'll get in when she gets in. But Skyblaze, how are you this evening?
I have been playing with technology all day.
Yes. Is this the Frankenstein's monster that you're building to attempt to cheat death, or is this a new project?
We don't talk about that. Just move on. No, I'm making a retro gaming emulator out of a Raspberry Pi.
Oh, how's that going?
Reasonably well. It hit a couple of stumbling blocks to do with my SD card being a pain in the backside, but I've got it sort of working.
You know, I keep hearing about all these things people are doing with the Raspberry Pis, and I'm frankly convinced that at some point someone's going to achieve true artificial intelligence on a Raspberry Pi. You know,
it wouldn't greatly surprise me. If you fancy amusing yourself for a few hours, there's a guy called there's a show called The Ben Heck Show. You can find it on YouTube. Who does a lot of stuff with the Raspberry Pi, and a lot of it's really cool. He does a lot of retro gaming systems. He managed to make a Dreamcast portable at one point, which was pretty impressive.
Okay, and Brian, how are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. I've had a long weekend. My throat probably is a little sore right now, so if I start to go quiet, that's kind of why.
Okay, alrighty. Okay, I myself am dealing with a leak in my ceiling that's rather significant. So if I suddenly vanish and you hear screams and the sound of running water, then it means the dam has burst and I have been washed away.
Usually I edit the screams out.
And a wild cat appears.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
Sorry, should I have just repeated my name a few times in a high squeaky voice?
Right, what kind of Pokeball do we need to catch a wild cat? Brian, did you say it would probably have to be a Great Ball or better?
It definitely have to be a Great Ball or better. That's my theory.
Yeah.
I want to know what kind of Pokeball it would take to catch a wild projectionist John. He hasn't been here in a while.
We need a couple more lures.
He's probably continent locked or something. We're not even going to be able to get him here.
Okay, but yes, the gang is all here, minus John, who we hope will return soon. But so yeah, we got a fun show tonight. Tonight we are discussing the 50th anniversary of Star Trek and sort of a mini review of the new Star Trek film, Star Trek Beyond. So which Brian got a chance to go out and see, and I think Kat, didn't you get a chance to see it as well?
I did.
All right, so we'll be able to do a quick mini review on that. But of course, there's procedure to follow, so we are going to begin with our new segment, Random Topic of the Week. And last week, we talked about nerdy superstition, so we got a couple of really good ones here. First one here comes from Mark, and he writes, "A friend in our gaming group passed away several years ago, and in tribute, we've always kept his chair empty and sat at the table with the rest of us. And we say that whenever we have a particularly good run of rolls, that he is with us and helping us." So, you know, that's nice.
Quite nice.
That's a nice little touching little tribute. So, you know, very sorry about your loss, Mark, and you know, here's hoping that your buddy is with you for more adventures to come. Let's see, another good one here. I have another. Excuse me, here. Okay, I have one here from Rachel. And she writes, "I have a member of my gaming group who, whenever a dice does him poorly, he takes it out back and buries it and considers it dead. He also refuses to buy any two dice of the same color, which makes it really awkward when he has to buy a large number of dice."
Most shops will sell dice individually.
Dude, there's a store by me that no shit, it sells nothing but dice. Doesn't sell games manuals, doesn't sell expansions. It just sells dice, and it's been there for like 6 years.
You can never have that many dice.
Nick can never have too many dice,
especially if you're playing high level White Wolf. Bucket of D10s.
Do I win?
No, you botched. Fuck.
The ones that really weird me out are like the dice within dice. Have you ever seen these?
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
Like those can't be game legal, can they?
Oh, they can.
Like those just blow my mind. And then you got the people who buy like the gold plated dice.
The weirdest set of dice I've got are my glyph dice, which are like cylindrical. They're really hard to describe. They're like vaguely cylindrical and they're like polygon shaped. So they've got flat edges around the edge of the cylinder, so they like will roll on a certain number. But
they look
really
almost
odd.
like a rupee from Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I know the ones you're talking about. Yeah, I get those, but like some of the ones, like you see the ones that are like, they're gold plated, or I think you shared a link with me on these a couple years ago, like dice carved from stone from a meteorite.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They were like $600 for a pair.
Mm-hmm.
Like that just seems horribly excessive to me. But then again, I'm paying $700 for a replica of Anakin's lightsaber from Episode 4, built out of an actual Graphics camera casing. So who am I to throw stones?
At one of the student role-playing national competitions that was held in Sheffield, the top prize was a full set, as in, D4 to D20, all the different dice, in Sheffield stainless steel.
Oh, wow. Okay, a little piece of home.
Yeah, double-sized as well, so they were really big and heavy.
So, like, if you threw these at somebody, you meant them grievous bodily harm?
Indeed. They were really cool looking, though.
Okay. All right. So, that was last week's topic. This week, since we're going to put a final cap on our Pokemon discussion here. We've all been playing the game for a while, and I'm sure that we've got some good stories. So this week's random topic is funny Pokemon Go stories, and I've got a really good one to open up with. I posted a few days ago that I had caught a Snorlax that I was especially proud of. And I caught this guy. I don't normally, because of my work schedule, I don't get a chance to really go out on safari. So most of the time when I'm out hunting Pokemon, I'm either doing it on the road on my way to or from work, or when I'm working my second job doing deliveries for Domino's. So on my way home from work last week, I think it was Wednesday night. I had my phone in my hand and my steering wheel in the other. Yeah, I know it's illegal in Maryland, but hey, traffic laws be damned. You got to catch them all.
Hold on. That is some absolute horrid advice. Absolutely. We do not condone driving and playing Pokemon Go at Nerd of Third Power. Please understand that.
Do as I say, not as I do.
No, don't do that either, because you're just telling them to do it.
I didn't tell them to do it. I just said that's what I do.
You said driving laws be damned. No, don't damn the driving laws. They're there for a reason.
So anyway, I'm driving home down Dorsey Road, which is this quiet little stretch of road, and my phone chirps. I look down, and it's a Snorlax at 853 combat power. Again, traffic laws be damned. I'm taking a swing at this guy. So I'm flitting back and forth between the phone and the road, and I'm flinging Pokeballs, and I finally catch him. And right as my phone registers the catch, I drive past this overgrown bushery on the side of the road that you can't see shit until you're like right on it. And cops love to camp out there. So of course, once I catch and I pass the bush, of course there's a cop there. And I pass him and I hear the whoop whoop, and I was like, oh shit, So I pull over. I get out my license and registration because I've done this dance before. Not for using my cell phone on the road, I've been pulled over for other things, but that's neither here nor there. Cop comes up, and this guy, he looks like like he stepped out of Smokey and the Bandit. He's got the wide brimmed hat, the sunglasses. He's chewing on a toothpick. The kind of cop that you look at like, I'm going to put your yuppie ass in the pokey, and they're going to pass you around like a blunt. So he comes up and he asks my license and registration. I hand it to him. And I was like, reason why I pulled you over was because I saw you on your cell phone while you were driving. And I was like, this guy's got me dead to rights. So I'm not even gonna argue. I was like, yeah, yes, sir, I was. I'm sorry. I know it's against the law. He says, are you playing that Pokemon Go thing? And I was like, yes, sir, I am. And he said, were you trying to catch that Snorlax a few minutes ago?
Fuck off.
Yes. funnily enough, officer, yes, I was. He stands there, chews on his toothpick for a couple seconds, and he says, I'll tell you what, if you can show me you caught it, I'll let you off with a warning.
Oh my God.
You can believe I whipped out that phone like I had the only lighter in a crack house. And he said, I've wasted about 20 Pokeballs before he finally ran off on me, so, off you go. Just to show you that people of all kinds are playing this game. So what about you guys? Have you guys had any funny stories with Pokemon Go?
Everyone goes back to the episode about my Pikachu one, because that's been the funniest things that's really happened to me. Everything else has been very mundane.
Now, if you told that story on the show, I don't think you did, or you didn't.
We had a whole episode about Pokemon Go.
Yeah, I told the story on the Pokemon Go episode.
Oh, because I thought that happened after we recorded that.
No, you need to pay attention to the shows I upload.
Okay, Skyblaze, what about you? Any particularly funny stories?
I was amused when I'd gone down to there's a shop, I don't know if you have them in America, it's called Hobbycraft, where they sell things like fabric and paints and everything to make crafting supplies, and it's huge. And the only one we've got in Sheffield is a few miles away in a retail park. So I had to take the tram to go down the Don Valley. Now, historically, it isn't anymore, but back in the olden days, the Don Valley used to be where all of the Sheffield heavy industry was. The coal coking plants, the steel mills, the rolling mills, all that sort of business, all down there. So back in like the 50s, 60s and 70s, that entire area would have been covered in smoke. And you can still see the remnants of it on a lot of the older buildings, because they're black. Especially anything that's made out of sandstone, it's absolutely black. But a lot of it's been like, a lot of the coking plants and steel mills are gone now, and there happens to be a retail park down there. So I went down there to pick up some stuff, and on my way back I was waiting for the tram and looking at my phone, and it buzzed. Okay, what's that? Oh, and it's a coughing. In the former heaviest industrial area in Sheffield, where all the pollution would be, it's a fucking coughing. Are you fucking kidding?
I'm surprised you didn't see a Grimer or a Muck as well.
Well, it gets better because a few days after that, when I started working on my Raspberry Pi project, and I needed an SD card, so I went, okay, it's a fairly nice day. I'll just walk down to Maplin's, the electronics store around the corner. So I think, while I'm doing this, I might as well take my phone and get some Pokemon. We don't tend to get a lot around here, apart from Pidgeys and all the Zubats and a billion water Pokemon, because I live on the top of 3 rivers in this area of Sheffield. But I got to Maplin, and just as I was about to turn my phone off so I could go inside and get the SD card, phone buzzes, and right outside the fucking door is an Electabuzz.
Oh.
I was like, what?
Did you get him?
I did, yeah.
Oh, I'm so jealous. When they institute trading, I'm gonna have to offer you my firstborn for it.
I've got a Porygon as well. I got that from Hillsborough Park. I was quite pleased.
Oh.
I have 2 Electrobuzzes.
Hey. So yeah, those are my 2 stories. The weirdly appropriate locations for catching Pokemon.
All right, Kat, what about you? You got a funny story to share?
I don't know if my story is funny, but just since we had done the Pokemon Go episode, in between then and now, I was on TV because of Pokemon. My friends and I were doing our now usual routine of going down to Main Street to go catch Pokemon and to collect a bunch of resources because we're all out of Pokeballs. And we had just gotten out of the car, hit the sidewalk, and some guy comes up to us and was like, hey, I'm from, insert local news station here. are you guys playing Pokemon Go? And we're like, yeah. And it's like me and 4 other people. So obviously we're all looking at our phones going, yeah, we're playing Pokemon. Anybody can tell. And he starts to ask us if we had heard about some news story that had, just been like breaking news. And it was the story of, I don't know, the authorities lured some pedophile who thought he was meeting up with a 14-year-old girl, something Pokemon Go. Like, they lured out some pedophile via Pokemon Go. And so this guy wanted to know if we had seen this news, and we were like, no. And then we were like, this is bad. This guy is trying to talk shit about Pokemon Go. He's trying to get a reaction out of us that we're going to shit all over it. And we, steered the conversation to all the good stuff about Pokemon Go. And we talked about how we played in this particular place because we felt really safe playing here. There was always a lot of other people. We were making a lot of connections and having a really good time. And we tried to, be very, very positive about it.
If you don't have a YouTube link where I can go and watch this, then we are no longer friends.
I have one of my friends recorded it on his phone, so it's not super high quality, but I do have a copy of the whole story.
Okay, because that's got to go up on the Facebook 10 minutes ago. that needs to happen.
Of all people to get interviewed, this particular place gets between 50 to 200 people playing every single night. And he just so happened to stop the 5 of us and talk to us for 5-10 minutes, however long he talked to us. There had been 2 segments of Pokemon that on that night's news, they had talked about the story twice. There was the 8 o'clock news and the 11 o'clock news or whatever. And we were on the 11 o'clock news, and they interviewed other people earlier that day. But I don't care about them because I was on TV.
Although your eyebrows seem to have different ideas from the rest of your face.
Oh my god. So, my friend was taking screen caps or pictures or whatever, and, he kept taking pictures of when I was in the middle of sentences, and it was really bright outside, and I didn't have my sunglasses on, so I'm squinting a lot, and because I was in the middle of talking, I'm having facial expressions that make sense for the conversation that is going on, but when you just look at them, my eyebrows look like they are going insane. I'm like Peter Capaldi. I get him on an eyebrow level.
Attack eyebrows.
Okay, but yeah, so those are our funny Pokemon Go stories. So we want to hear yours. Has there been a funny mishap or amusing anecdote that has occurred while you've been out hunting Pokemon? So sound off in the comments, or you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. And ordinarily at this point, this is where we would do Ask a Geek, but we've got a lot of show to do today, so we're going to forego Ask a Geek tonight. Tyler, I don't worry. I've got your questions. You'll be the first up on the block next week, I promise. So, but we've got a big discussion topic to get through to do tonight, and that is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry's legendary sci-fi masterpiece that has pretty much been the example of uber fandom. As far as I can recall, and it's changed so many lives and brought together so many people, and it's changed so radically over the last 50 years that we thought it'd be now would be a good time to go back and take a look at this legendary franchise and see what makes it tick and why it is still such a driving force in geek culture even today. And we're fortunate enough to have 2 major Star Trek nerds on the show with us, Skyblaze and Kat. You're both Trekkies from way back, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, so I can elaborate if you need me to.
I figured we'd actually elaborate, actually in the discussion section. But
Okay, so Skyblaze, let's start with you. Give us a bit of a history on how Star Trek came to be and sort of the initial splash that it made when it first appeared on the scene.
To be honest, it didn't really make that much of a splash when it first appeared. The genesis of it really was genesis of it. I made a funny. Was basically
wherever he is, John is going, puns are my job.
It was inadvertent, I promise. I'm not sure if that makes it better or worse. Anyway, was basically Gene Roddenberry knew some people, had a rep as a script doctor and a writer, was like, I've got this idea for this show called Star Trek. And a lot of the way that they actually got it made was they just went, look, it's a Western in space. And that's how they got the studio to approve it. And Lucille Ball was actually, because it was made at Desilu Studios, which was her studio, and she was actually one of the people really pushing for it. It was like, I think this is a really good thing, partially because they actually had people like Uhura and Yeoman Rand and Christine Chappell, who were involved in the cast and actually had stuff to do other than hang over a man's arm, which was not a thing that happened in American TV during the 60s, as far as I can tell. So that got it made. Apparently the studios were very unconvinced by both Uhura and Mr. Spock, and then all of Mr. Spock's fan mail came in truckloads, and they were like, okay, turns out we were wrong. I'm not going to go into a lot of the controversy about that, and the fact that a lot of Nichelle Nichols' fan mail was kept from her. She was really quite badly treated for a lot of the run by the studio.
Well, there's one story concerning Nichelle Nichols that I do want to touch upon, and that was that the anecdote that I heard that at one point she was ready to quit the series, and no less than Martin Luther King Jr. himself called her up and said, "No, you need to stay on this show because because what you're doing is really groundbreaking here for African Americans everywhere."
I wish you hadn't started to tell this story, because I know the story a little bit in more detail than that, and I was going to tell the story because he didn't call her up. She was at a party, and somebody was like, here, I need you to meet your biggest fan, and she thinks it's going to be some kid, and it's Martin Luther King Jr., and she freaks out because she was all ready to quit the show and go back to the stage, and she didn't think it was that big of a deal. Like, this was her, like, Star Trek was her in-between job where she was just trying to get her name out there, and she wasn't really super committed to it. And then she got told what was what. And just, wow, what a difference it would have made, but what a difference it did make for people.
Mm. Well, Whoopi Goldberg is on record as saying, it was seeing Uhura that led her into acting. Yes, representation absolutely. Is pretty important.
And the thing is, like, we talk about how groundbreaking a series it was, but sometimes I think we kind of gloss over sort of the outer context of what was happening at the time, and some things that maybe because we're so used to it nowadays, we don't even stop to think about. Like, everybody knows about, Uhura was important to African American viewers, and George Takei was important to Asian viewers. But at the 1960s, Cold War is still in full swing, and here we have Chekhov, a Russian, operating on the bridge of the Starship, and it's treated as like no major big deal.
A friend of mine pointed this out. It's like, it wasn't just that he was Russian and existed. He made jokes about being Russian. We Russians invented this. We are clearly superior, and everyone laughs about it. As a kind of just to prove, all of these nationalistic tensions are so far in the past now that it's just a good laugh.
Yeah, and it's like they're like almost every cast member on the show did something groundbreaking in some in large ways, some in really small ways, but a lot of the social impact of the original Star Trek series is stuff that you wouldn't really stop to consider unless you really knew the socio-political landscape at the time. there's a history teacher that I didn't take any of his classes in college, but he teaches at the community college, and when he starts talking about McCarthyism, he brings out the one episode where Kirk was on trial for I can't remember what exactly, something about he initiated a self-destruct or a red alert at the wrong time, and it wound up getting a crew member killed, and he was getting framed. And he held that up as sort of a mirror on McCarthyism, which was in swing at the time. So like I said, there's a lot of context that we nowadays either don't know or just don't think about, because it's so far in our past. But it's really hard to understate just how apart from the rest of the pack Star Trek was for its day.
And it wasn't just putting people of color on screen. It wasn't as simple as that. It was giving them things to do, and creating characters that weren't stereotypes. So having a black woman on the screen who wasn't somebody's slave or wasn't somebody's mammy or whatever other stereotype was still existing on TV at the time. She was in charge. Like, she was a woman of power. Her position was high on the show, basically. So to have all of these people of color working together and building a more ideal universe, but also that they were all entrusted and they all highly respected one another. It's not just about putting color on screen, it's about putting good representations of people on screen. And I think that was it's such a brilliant move. It was just something that the era needed, and thank God for it.
It was also the positivity of it, the idea that humanity doesn't wreck itself and manages to get into space and talk to other creatures and other beings who think differently to us, and we don't blow them up. We make friends with them.
Crazy talk.
It was sort of that premise that led to, at least I think it led to, the other thing that made Star Trek gave it sort of its initial going power, was it attracted some really heavy hitters in the sci-fi writing back in the day. Like Harlan Ellison did a couple of scripts. I know that at one point Isaac Asimov almost got tapped to write a script.
He was a big fan. He was. Do you know the story about the pre-screening of the Menagerie?
Was that the story where he was at a convention, they were playing his pilot, and Roddenberry was like, "Will you shut up? They're playing my pilot." And someone was like, "Congratulations, you just insulted Isaac Asimov."
Yep.
Yeah,
he was like, "Oh God, I am going to be torn to shreds." And then Isaac Asimov was like, "I am so sorry. That was brilliant. Can I buy you a drink?" And it's like, and became like the series' biggest champion. Like fucking what?
And another thing that another challenge that Star Trek had to overcome was the networks just did not like it. And they tried to we talk about how Firefly is a cursed series, meanwhile old school Star Trek is over here going, "Oh, you're so adorable." Like all the crap that the networks ran Roddenberry through. There's a story that it was not so much a story, it's sort of a routine that he did at this one convention. Which if you bought a certain cut of the soundtrack to the first Star Trek motion picture, you got this story in a second disc, where he talks about like the kind of things that the censors would make, the kind of hoops they'd make him jump through. And he said, the only way I can really illustrate it is to write out the kind of report that they would send me for something that you wouldn't think would be a big deal. So he writes out a censor's notes on doing a teleplay based on the Bible. And it's things like, sons and daughters of Noah cannot be seen as repopulating the earth, as it could imply incestuous relationships. Recommend a fleet of arks instead of just the one, or perhaps strong swimmers from other families can be saved. And just stuff that it's just so ridiculous and off the wall that you wouldn't even think would have been a problem. You almost feel like somebody in the higher ups was just gunning for Roddenberry, the number of hoops they made him jump through, and that he was able to push through that and put this out is really amazing. And yet, even with that, it wasn't until reruns that Star Trek first started getting popular, wasn't it?
Yeah. it was only in the 70s when it was students who made it such a huge deal, because it was rerun like during the day or in the afternoon when students have just finished classes or they don't have classes in the afternoon, and they'd be like, I am so bored, flick, 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 ooh, what's this? All of a sudden, all over America, there are whichever student has the biggest TV is inviting all of his friends over to watch this new show. And
let's go to Johnny's room. He's got an 8-inch.
Whatever works. There's too many
Some people
jokes.
probably took that way out of context.
Yep.
Well, hello
too
there.
Many jokes. Anyway, yeah, go over there, watch the show, and some of the earliest fan gatherings were on on university campuses. But the first official convention, which I think was in New York, was organised by a group of female fans. It had been strongly rumoured that the network were going to drop it. Even this is like before it went into syndication, and the fandom was still large enough and bonkers enough and organised enough, and Gene Roddenberry had absolutely nothing to do with this whatsoever. No, sir. That they got enough people together to write into the studio and say, we want Star Trek back. That through sheer weight of numbers, the studio capitulated and went, yeah, fine. That was led by one Bijou Trimble, and totally not Gene Roddenberry, honest God. And it worked, but then the studio slashed the budget in half. So a lot of people complain about the drop in quality between seasons 2 and 3. Part of it was because the budget had been absolutely decimated, and it had been decimated so badly that a lot of the really good writers from season 1 and 2, they couldn't afford to bring them back. So they were working with like bargain basement stuff, which was insanity, and it's why you get like some of the garbage that we got in season 3. Things like Spock's brain, where nobody seemed to know anything about the characters because nobody knew anything about the writer didn't know anything about the characters. Gene Roddenberry himself had buggered off during this period because he was like, if you're not going to take this seriously, then screw you all. Which is why you get that. But there's still some good stuff in season 3. It's just the quality isn't as high in general as it was in the other 2 seasons.
You've got to dig to find it.
Yeah.
And yet, this fan base kept growing and growing, and it eventually got big enough to where, Hollywood started getting involved and like, oh, maybe there's a film franchise in here. So that led to about 10 years later, the first Star Trek motion picture, which some say is awesome, others are considerably less kind, like me.
The thing about Star Trek the motion picture is there are about 3 cuts of it. And there's one cut of it, which I think was the original American home video version, which is half decent. The only real problem with it is that the effect shots are overlong. There are some, I haven't seen one in years, but there are some fan cuts kicking around where they actually do tighten it up a lot using that as a base. And it works a lot better. It's still quite slow-paced, and it's still a little confused in places, but it makes sense, and it is a lot more enjoyable to sit through than the original theatrical cut, because the theatrical cut makes no goddamn sense at all. Like, who are they? What's going on? Why are they there? What?
I got the feeling watching the motion picture that Roddenberry wanted to make 2001, but the studio wanted him to do Star Wars.
Pretty much, yeah.
But, we got 6 motion pictures out of the original series. 7 if you want to count Generations as a TOS film. Which I think is the most films that have ever come out of a television property, like, ever. Like, in many ways, the films out, had almost had more impact than the TV series, because, like, we were still getting original series Star Trek films after the start of Star Trek The Next Generation, like 20 years later.
I actually did see a couple of the Star Trek films before I saw the original series.
So did I.
Because of how young I was at the time.
And what was really fascinating to me about the films is that you can almost see sort of the transition from the more out there stories of the original series to some of the more, grounded political stories from The Next Generation. There
was still a lot of political and social commentary in the original series, but it's got that kind of slightly psychedelic air to it that...
Well, it was the 60s.
It was the 60s. It just has that air to it that means it's a lot more... It feels a lot more fantastic. There's a lot of science fantasy in the original series. And as it goes on, it becomes kind of... The sci-fi gets steadily harder and harder the further you go through the decades.
So, late 80s comes, and Roddenberry decides he wants to get back into Star Trek as a television series, and he dreams up Star Trek The Next Generation, and it's almost like a lather, rinse, repeat of the original series, except this time everything works, for the most part.
Are we going to go into Phase 2? Or are we leaving that for now?
Well, I mean, Phase 2 never really happened, did it?
Well, no, but it turned into... It kind of half turned into Star Trek The Motion Picture and half turned into Next Gen. A lot of concepts from Phase 2, things like the original concept for Ilea, were turned into Deanna Troi, and Decker was turned into Riker. There's a lot of parallels if you actually read up on... There's a book that I got several years ago, which goes into a lot of detail about the parallels between the original concepts for Next Gen and the Phase 2 stuff.
But I don't know if we can really go into it in detail because we've only got 20 minutes and we've still got a lot of ground to cover.
Okay, well, I've covered a lot of it. If you're interested, then poke me and I will give you a dissertation. There we go.
Okay. But one of the things that always struck me about Next Generation was that Roddenberry still kept to his vision of humanity and civilization in general as continuing to grow and to learn. Like in the original series, you wouldn't see, Captain Kirk had no kind words for the Klingons. Like he would never sit down eye to eye and see eye to eye with a Klingon over anything except I hate you, you hate me. Good, that's agreed. Let's kill each other.
There was a whole movie about that.
Exactly, several in fact.
But there was also the Day of the Dove in the original series, where they do team up to beat something else by laughing at it like it's a boggart from Harry Potter.
Yeah, but that was still very teeth clenched. But you start next.
Yeah, the point of that was in the right circumstances, if we are required to stand side by side to beat something else, we can do that. We are not so blinded by our own hatred and rage that we're incapable.
You're making my point before I can get to it. Because we open with Next Generation with Worf, a Klingon, serving with distinction on a Federation starship. And here again, we kind of go back to what we were saying with Chekhov. It's like, it's the idea that, there's no such thing as what's the word I'm looking for? An enemy in certain terms, that, we can always move past our differences and come together and to learn and to grow and to help each other. And there's a lot of the original series still in the first couple seasons of Next Generation before it sort of morphed. And it's really interesting to see it sort of evolve from simply Star Trek 2 to its own entity. And can I say that I don't think I've ever seen a ensemble cast that was as perfectly put together as Star Trek The Next Generations.
Would you say that even of Will Wheaton?
Yeah, well, I
There was nothing wrong with him as an actor in and of himself. When they actually gave him good material, I mean, things like The First Duty, he pulls it off. but he was given garbage. Yeah, he was expected to be. He was expected to be, this annoying, obnoxious little genius, and who everybody is supposed to love and admire, but in fact, everybody just found incredibly obnoxious. And so all the audience found him obnoxious as well.
But otherwise, I mean, inspired casting. Now, we nowadays, we think Patrick Stewart, we think, Captain Picard. But before he actually took the role, if you suggest, Patrick Stewart doing a sci-fi television series, what liquor are you taking? Because he was a very, very respected Shakespearean play actor before he took up Captain Picard.
We also wanted to give him a wig.
Yeah, that was hilarious. And he was told by his agent, you'll be doing this for like a year, maybe 2. It'll be a good pit stop for you, get a steady wage, buy a house, and then you can go back to the stage if you want. Really?
But he's immortal, so he could honestly do it forever.
I'm convinced that he has the Philosopher's Stone. I'm just convinced.
Well, you see that picture of him with all the other captains, and it's like, have you aged?
If anything, he's gotten younger.
The Scott Bakula's almost as bad, because you look at him now and him back in the last season of Quantum Leap, it's very difficult to tell the fecking difference. Are you sharing the elixir of life?
Just traveling from body to body, just takes years off your life.
Lol.
Wow, this conversation's full of Full Metal Alchemist references.
But mostly Quantum Leap.
But yeah, and we also started seeing, but now the question that I have is, but we had Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it was such a huge success that we got 2 spin-offs out of it, one of which is generally very well received, and the other, there's some arguments about. So now I want to put the question to you: Deep Space Nine and Voyager, your thoughts on each?
Deep Space Nine took a while to get going. The first couple of seasons was such a slog. It all livened up once Worf arrived, and he was like, "Hello, I have brought all of the interesting with me." Tell me it's not true. Come on.
No, he does kind of show up and is like, okay, the best way I heard it described was the moment where in that episode where he first steps onto the station, the camera pans up to him. He says, "Okay, at this precise moment, a FedEx man is arriving at the studio, going, yes, I have this shipment of awesome. Can you sign for this?"
So back it up, beep beep beep.
But
after that, the Dominion War arc, it becomes, in some places, it becomes quite difficult to watch, because some of it is so wrenching and so bleak in places. I mean, it becomes like a proper war movie in places. And it's great telly, but oh fuck, is it hard to sit through more than once.
After the siege of AR-35, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I hate Vic Fontaine, but we need some Bing Crosby right now. What I always liked about Deep Space Nine was, going back to what you said about how the original series was a Western in space, was Deep Space Nine felt almost sort of like, whereas the first was kind of almost like a wagon train in space, this series felt more like, okay, we're at Fort Alamo in space. And because of that static setting, because they weren't jumping from planet to planet every week, they were able to focus more on the development of characters and more in-depth story arcs than they were able to do in, say, the original series or Next Generation. And that's what really appealed to me about the series.
I have to point out, because I do live in Texas, the Alamo is not a fort, it was a mission.
I'm very sorry.
More you know.
I will send you an apologetic basket of cheeses and crackers.
By law, I have to correct anyone that says that. I'm sorry.
Or you'll be visited by a cowboy.
We'll be visited by a cowboy.
It's Twoo. It's all Twoo.
Okay. But Brian and Kat, what were your thoughts on the Next Gen spinoffs?
For me, I didn't watch a whole lot of Deep Space Nine while it was running. I caught a lot of it in reruns. I don't know how this happened. I caught all of Voyager, though. I don't know that I had a particular love of Voyager, except in retrospect. What it was that my dad was tape recording the episodes as they aired for a coworker who, for some reason, couldn't watch it himself. So I watched all of the episodes just because my dad was recording it. And so, of course, that was the one that I ended up liking the most, was Voyager, because first off, female captain was a big deal. Whether or not you like her, irrelevant. I don't care whether or not you like Janeway. It goes back to representation. Having a female captain who's kind of a hard ass and sits there and makes mean faces at people is kind of awesome. I loved Janeway, and it was really cool to. Everybody loves Seven of Nine for one reason, which was the costume. And I liked Seven of Nine because she was kind of like a cool story to have in there. Sort of like Worf was the outsider, the Klingon, the bad guy who became a good guy, kind of trope. Seven of Nine sort of served that function of somebody who's relearning to be human and somebody who's traditionally an enemy who is now an ally. I really liked a lot of that. Not all of it, but a lot of that. So I actually really enjoyed Voyager. I know most people probably didn't, but I know I did.
I enjoyed most of it. I do have to admit, though, that the general level of the script writing really went downhill in the later seasons.
This is something that I know quite a bit about because a friend of mine was involved in doing some script doctoring, some non-credited script doctoring, actually, for some of the mid-seasons of Voyager. So I know quite a lot about what was going on in the writing room at that period, and it wasn't good. There was no real leadership. There was a lot of toing and froing about directions of characters. Nothing had really been nailed down. Some of the actors were very unhappy about the way that the characters had been treated.
Robert Beltran in particular.
Robert Beltran and I've forgotten his name, the guy that plays Harry Kim.
Garrett Wang.
He was pretty unhappy as well. There were a lot of problems in the writing room about direction, and because very early on there was a kind of, do we want to make another Deep Space Nine? Do we want to make another Next Gen? They were very heavily pressured by the studio to make another Next Gen. They really wanted to do another Deep Space Nine because it was much more interesting to write. So you ended up with this kind of like torn down the middle thing where it's like, we want to write character arcs, we're not allowed to because we have to have the studio mandated reset button, which caused a lot of friction, a lot of problems, and you can really tell. There are some superb episodes. Things like Message in a Bottle is absolutely brilliant and hilarious. But, I mean, most things involving the EMH are brilliant. But there's also some absolutely appalling episodes.
It was a very uneven show, is what we're trying to say.
It really was,
It's really interesting and another thing to point out, these two shows ran side by side, so it's really interesting to hold them up against each other and see how something that works in one series did not work or would not work in the other series and vice versa. So it's really interesting to kind of juxtapose these two.
Because they had completely different tones. They were totally different shows.
What is interesting is that Deep Space Nine actually holds. A friend of mine brought this up at a party I was at the other day. Deep Space Nine tends to hold up better when you treat it like DVD box sets or a Netflix show. If you sit and binge it, it's very difficult to binge watch Voyager because of how uneven the tone is and the fact that there aren't any story arcs to kind of keep you in. Whereas Deep Space Nine is very, very easy to binge. So it's kind of almost ahead of its time in that particular aspect.
Yeah, that was how I actually discovered Deep Space Nine, was on Netflix, and growing up, it was my father's favorite Star Trek series, and I kind of poo-pooed him for it because I was like, oh, it's in the same place every single week. That just sounds boring. And then I discovered it, and I got 2 seasons in, and I called up and I was like, okay, yeah, everything I said to you about making fun of you for liking Deep Space Nine, I take it all back.
You gotta stop judging over there, because this happens a lot with you.
Well, look, growing, it was my dad. Anything your parents like, is supposed to be automatically uncool when you're a teenager. So,
I never experienced this, but then my parents are awesome.
Well, grow up with a math teacher father, and then come back to me.
I had an engineer father. So,
yeah. So, and then came the last Star Trek series.
Oh God!
Which I will admit it had its many flaws, but its first and third seasons I will fight to the death to defend, and that was Star Trek Enterprise, which wound the clock back even before the original series, and even from the start, it was a very divisive series because of how radically different it was to everything that came before it. Like, we talk again about how the original series was a Western in space, and DS9 was, Remember the Alamo in space. Star Trek Enterprise was very much a military drama, I felt. At least especially in the third season when they did the Xindi story arc.
If they'd actually kept to that tone, it would have been fine. But again, they were trying to do the original series with next-gen sensibilities, and it already felt dated because they'd done it that way. If you watch the first 2 seasons of Enterprise now, it feels dated, which is really weird.
Well, I think part of that was because, the original series and the Next Generation, they did social commentary issues, but it was all done very subtly to where you could apply it to just about any point in time. Whereas Enterprise, that subtlety was gone. Like, you look at the episode where the Enterprise is hijacked by cultists who worship the Sphere Makers, and Archer asks, well, what's the difference between your belief and theirs? It's like, we believe that the Sphere Makers created the universe in 6 days, and they believe that it took 7, and it's like, that whole episode just screams 9/11, War on Terror, Bush administration. You can't really, apply that. You can't look at that without knowing exactly where it came from and where it fits into the social political consciousness of the time. It's again, the only way that I could really describe it is it was the writers beating us with a fish made from their politics.
Just to kind of finish off with, I'm not going to go into too much detail about Enterprise because we're running out of time very quickly, but the last episode of Enterprise was such an insult. It was an insult to the cast, it was an insult to the fans, it was an insult to the franchise as a whole. Yeah, let's take a episode of The Next Generation, not even a particularly good episode, a kind of middle-of-the-road episode, and make it so that Enterprise as a whole is just a side story in The Next Gen. Fuck off. I mean, I watched that it was actually the closing party for the Star Trek Society at the University of Sheffield. We were shutting the society down, and that was kind of the end party. And that had just been broadcast, and we went, let's put it on. And when we got to that bit where it was like Riker shows up and it shuts down the holodeck, we were throwing things at the screen.
Yeah, I'm surprised you guys didn't do a do-over on that party. Like, let's watch All Good Things instead. Let's do this tomorrow, but instead let's watch All Good Things.
I think we ended up putting First Contact on after that. We were like, let's watch something good, Star Trek. Yeah, okay, what do we have immediately to hand? First Contact, that'll do.
Okay. So, and of course, we're not really going to talk about the 2009 Star Trek film or Into Darkness because we've already covered those. But let's talk briefly about Star Trek Beyond, which just came out this last weekend, and which Brian and Kat, you both went to see. Okay, so, Star Trek Beyond, what's reportedly going to be the final film in the Abrams verse. And I gotta say, before we get into this was not a film that I thought was going to be good in any way based on the trailers, and yet I'm hearing a lot of good things from the people who've seen it, which is just you two guys. So I guess my first question is this a case of just it was a bad trailer?
Yes. But before we go any further, final film in the Abrams verse. They've already talked about the next movie.
Oh, crap.
Ha-ha!
They've already talked about how Chris Hemsworth is probably going to be in it. So.
Ooh, as Papa Kirk?
Yes,
I can't imagine any other character.
Yeah, of course, but he also died in the first film, so we're like, huh?
Like, yeah, Chris. Oh, he was already. Oh, wait, what?
Yeah. I'm really hoping that this is a prequel, because if they wind up bringing back Papa Kirk in a fourth film that takes place after all the first three, it pretty much removes all of James Kirk's motivation from the last three films. I was like, okay, he's upset because his dad dies. Okay, his dad's still alive, so now he's just...
I always thought it was going more along the lines of he may be coming back as, like, flashback sequences or something like that, or video things that Kirk has to watch. I mean, I don't know. It's probably not going to come out for another 2 years.
Yeah, that's...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Well, anyway, Star Trek Beyond. Brief general thoughts.
Surprisingly good, especially because, as you said, like, the trailers did not make it look good at all. So going in with fairly low expectations, coming out extremely happy.
Very much so. A lot of the... I think it almost played out, because I think some of the later TV spots and trailers, in fact, spoiled a lot of the film, a lot of the really good stuff. And since I wasn't really overall impressed with the first trailer, I didn't pay attention to that. So when I saw the film, I was like, oh, I had sort of those reactions to it. Like, this is kind of neat and fun. I like where this... It feels like, like I said, it feels more right than Into Darkness was. It felt more Star Trek-y. They still kept a lot of the action, because I guess the studio really wants to make a Star Trek action film. But this one I liked better because it had... What I liked about a lot of Star Trek stuff is that they had to solve a problem in kind of a ridiculous way. Like, that's what I really like about Star Trek, is like, we have this really weird situation. Hey, really smart people in the room, can we fix this? Here's some really weird stuff that we can do. They're like, let's do it! Like, that's always my favorite part of Star Trek.
Okay, alright.
What I really enjoyed about the film is that for the first time since they rebooted the franchise film-wise, it felt like more characters got to shine. It's always been a Kirk and Spock show with a bit of Scotty and maybe a bit of Sulu, and everyone else is just there for decoration. And some Uhura drama that I just try and write out of my brain. But this one, it really... A lot more characters got a lot more screen time and then more lines, and it was actually really nice.
So, what was sort of just a general plot synopsis of the film?
The plot synopsis is that it starts off with Kirk is feeling pretty bummed out. He's really thinking about quitting his job. He just feels like he's not accomplishing anything.
What, again?
Yes.
This makes, the sixth time he's quit or thought about it? 4 of which were in the last film?
Actually, technically, he's thinking about taking a promotion and then moving to a different division, basically, and not being the captain of the Enterprise anymore. But anyway, he's at this brand new, shiny new space station, and they get a distress call in the nebula, and the only ship that can actually successfully navigate the nebula is the Enterprise. So the Enterprise crew is like, okay, we're totally gonna do this even though we'll have no communication systems while we're in there. So they go and answer this distress call, and lo and behold, it's a trap. The Enterprise is totally destroyed and they're stranded on the planet, and they're trying to unravel the mystery of who has attacked them, why have they been attacked, what is that person's motivation, and then lots of big flashy action, and they have to save the day.
using probably one of the dumbest things I have ever seen in my life that I can't help but love.
It's so great and dumb, but great, but dumb.
That's what I was saying. Like, I don't want to spoil. I'm trying not to spoil it too much, but it's sort of a callback to the first film, where they sort of, like I said, they have to solve a problem. They figure out how to take out the guy's like enemy ships in such a dumb way using a very, very specific song that I really enjoy. And it was actually, and then
It's not another Beastie Boys song, is it?
It's the same Beastie Boys song. It's one of my favorite songs.
Sorry, Gonzo. But music is magic.
But it's just this one, like, they did a really good job of foreshadowing it. And then, like, when the movie was talking about it and they're like, how to do it, I sat in my seat going, no. They're not, no, you're not going to do it. And then they flip it on and you hear the first, like, guitar beats of the song. I'm like, they're going to do it.
Oh, man.
It actually, the movie compared to the previous movie felt quite campy, which was something that I think the movies, they've had funny moments, but they've taken themselves pretty seriously, especially Into Darkness with Khan and that being a rather dark story. Whereas this one...
Oh, you mean 9/11 in space?
Yeah. This one, however, was way more upbeat. It had a lot more energy. There was a lot more camp to it. So the camp sort of felt good. Like, it was hokey, but you loved it because it was hokey and it was Star Trek. And I have a very specific space to land ratio that has to be fulfilled in any Star Wars or Star Trek film, because if you do too much of one, then you're not getting enough of the other. For the film has to have enough time in space that you don't, that you don't think it shouldn't be called star anything, but it has to have some time on land to sort of vary the scenes. And this had a really good balance of space battle and land battle, but it also had a lot of downtime to do all of the philosophical, musing, character stuff.
Where does someone exist in the universe? Because there's a one little tribute to Leonard Nimoy. And that's where Spock's arc kind of goes from. Is like, he also feels like he hasn't done enough for his race and things like that. And so he wondered where he should have maybe exist or not be a part of Starfleet because of that. He should be trying to go out and help Vulcan. And but then sort of realizes later on that if he leaves Captain Kirk alone for like 5 minutes, just shit gets rocked.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, we're kind of running a little over here. So, your final ratings on the film. So, once again, our rating scale from best to worst is see it now, wait for matinee, wait for DVD, wait for rental, wait for cable, don't even bother. And Brian's rating, fuck this movie. So, what's your final ratings on this film, real quick?
See it now. Don't mind those trailers that looked really bad. It's actually a great, clever film. It's a good Star Trek film. Go see it now.
I kind of have it at, like, a matinee area. Like, definitely if you got, like, some afternoon time to kill, go definitely see it. I think you'll really enjoy yourself with it. It feels like it's the step in sort of the right direction. Like, something they should have done really at the very beginning of this whole new Star Trek universe kind of thing. Reboot / retcon, whatever you want to call it. So I like, hopefully this is sort of where they're going to go into the future with it. Go beyond. I hate myself.
Also, because it's Justin Lin and not J.J. Abrams, there's a lot less lens flare.
A lot less. There was like some at the beginning, I'm like, Justin? He's like, just kidding.
Okay. All right. Well, that's about all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. So yeah, that's we've covered a lot of ground today. There's so much more to talk about with Star Trek, but I mean, honestly, to try and go into every single thing, we'd be here all night, and some of us have lives.
Yeah. So sound off in the comments. Sound off in the comments. Tell us what you think is your favorite Star Trek moment or series. What you think Star Trek has done to the world and to your life.
Yeah. So, so go ahead, sound off. We love hearing from you guys. So, that's all the time that we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. We will see you next week. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the Cat.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Skyblaze.
All right, we'll see you next week. Taka, play us out.